The story begins on the northern border when the savage Huns have finally breached the Great Wall led by the ruthless Shan Yu. Although killed by his men, the soldiers lit the beacon towers to alert the imperial city of the looming invasion. Having been warned of their presence, General Li suggests protecting the palace, but the emperor orders his men to defend his people instead. He then calls Chief Fu, his general council, to send conscription notices throughout all the provinces, requiring one man from each family to join the Imperial Chinese army. The general claims his men are enough to stop Shan Yu and his army, but the emperor explains that one man may be the difference between victory and defeat. Meanwhile, to the south, Fa Mulan is the only daughter of the Honorable Fa Zhao, a retired veteran of the Imperial Army who once served the emperor in his time. Mulan is an adventurous and active young woman to the dismay of her family, who hope for her to bring honor to their family by finding a capable suitor. She's arranging to meet with the matchmaker to ascertain her fitness as a bride. While taking notes on her arm, she later realizes she is about to be late for her appointment. After feeding the chickens with the help of their dog and serving tea for her ailing father, she quickly seeks her mother and grandmother, who await her in town so they can dress her up for her appointment with the matchmaker. Before Mulan arrived in town, her grandmother had brought a lucky cricket, Cricky. She crossed the busy streets blindfolded to test how lucky the cricket was, causing a street accident. Albeit she came out unscathed, she claims it to be lucky indeed. They immediately worked on Mulan, cleaning, dressing, and painting her to be a future bride. According to their tradition, men honor their families by fighting for the emperor, while women bear sons. Her grandmother gives her an apple for serenity, a pendant for balance, beads of jade for beauty, and cricket for luck. Mulan was later deemed too skinny and unfit for bearing sons by the matchmaker. When asked to recite the final admonition, Mulan manages to answer thanks to the notes she had on her arm. When the matchmaker thought she was cheating, she grabbed her arm, thinking it was written on her fan. She then asks Mulan to pour some tea for her, to which she claims that if she hopes to please her future in-laws, she must demonstrate a sense of dignity and refinement. When the matchmaker took the cup of tea, Mulan realized the cricket was in it soaking. She tried to take it back from the matchmaker, but when they were fighting over it, it spilled all over the matchmaker. Furious, the matchmaker tried to get her hands on Mulan when the cricket was moving inside her dress, to which she spilled the furnace and accidentally sat on the coal, burning her skirt. Mulan tried to help her by fanning it, which made the flames burn brighter. Mulan soaked her in tea, trying to kill the fire on her skirt. Furious, the matchmaker besmirched Mulan, deeming her to be a disgrace to her family. Mulan returns home with her face down, embarrassed over the mishap with the matchmaker, and sulks in the garden. She worries that she may never be a perfect bride or daughter. Her father tries to comfort her by trying to explain that, albeit a late bloomer, she would be the most beautiful flower when it does. While having a father and daughter moment, the town's drums are heard to announce the arrival of an imperial messenger. Chief Fu explains that the Huns have finally invaded China, and that the emperor has ordered that one man from every family must serve in the imperial army. Since the elderly Fa Zhao is the only man in their family, he is forced to be conscripted into the army. Mulan tried to interrupt by explaining her father's condition, but Fa Zhao felt embarrassed having his daughter talk for him. Later, Mulan witnesses her father on his knees in pain after a quick brush up on his swordsmanship. At dinner, everyone is quiet, so Mulan speaks her mind. She tries to dissuade her father by claiming that there are plenty of young men to fight for China, but he protests, explaining that it is an honor to protect his country and his family. He then shouts at her, telling her to learn her place. Mulan walks away from dinner, clearly unable to do anything about her father's situation and his decision. After being soaked in the rain, Mulan later realized what she needed to do. Fearing for his life, Mulan decides to go in his place instead. She cuts off her hair, steals her father's armor, and disguises herself as a man so she can enlist in the army. Quickly learning of her departure, Mulan's grandmother prays to the family's ancestors for Mulan's safety. Her mother asks Fa Zhao to go after her, fearing she would get killed on the battlefield, but he explains that she would be should he reveal her. Later that night at the Fa family shrine, the great ancestor wakes up after hearing their pleas along with Mushu, a small red dragon, and a disgraced former family guardian, now demoted, to awakening the spirits of the ancestors. After debating who to send after Mulan, the great ancestor decides to send in the most powerful guardian, the Great Stone Dragon. and orders Mushu to wake him up. After accidentally destroying the Guardian's statue, Mushu decides to go after Mulan and make her a war hero to redeem himself as a family guardian for his past transgressions. Mulan made its way to the Wuzhong camp where recruits were ordered to go, but before she went, she practiced her speech and her identity with her horse Khan to make it more convincing. Worried that she might not pass up for a man, Mushu shows up, claiming to have been sent by the ancestors to guide her. After seeing his appearance, Mulan loses hope, but Mushu claims that with his guidance, she will pass off as a man and return home as a hero. Mushu's misguided instructions had already created altercations for Mulan when she met fellow recruits Yao, Ling, and Qianpo. Her squabble with the trio has created disarray with the rest of the recruits. Meanwhile, inside one of the tents, General Li and his son Shang have been reviewing the plan. General Li suggests taking the main army to the Tongshao Pass to stop Shan Yu before he destroys the village. He leaves Li Shang to train the new recruits while promoting him to captain. Chi Fu questions his decision and suggests getting someone with more experience. General Li explains that Captain Li Shang is more than capable given that he graduated as number 1 in his class, has extensive knowledge of training techniques, and has a rather impressive military lineage. When they leave the tent, they find the recruits fighting, which they expect Captain Shang to handle. Shang breaks the fight and immediately gets a bad first impression of Mulan, who introduces herself as Ping. He then orders everyone to spend the rest of the day cleaning up the mess and preparing for their training tomorrow. The next day, Mulan shows up late for training, and the others already show animosity towards her after what happened yesterday. Their training starts with retrieving an arrow on top of the pole while using weighted straps. They were also trained with bow sticks, how to shoot an arrow, fishing, shooting with cannons, physical combat, and hiking through the mountains with rocks. When Shang thinks it is hopeless, Mulan shows determination and reaches the wooden pole's top. Eventually, the recruits are shaping up and gradually becoming properly trained soldiers. After a hard day's training, Mulan was bathing in a lake when she almost got caught when the trio Yao, Ling, and Qianpo suddenly arrived to bathe. Thanks to Mushu biting Ling, the trio were scared off, mistaking him for a snake and distracting them while Mulan got out. Later, Mulan and Mushu overhear Shang and Chi Fu arguing. Having completed their training, Shang wants to meet with the Imperial Army, but Chi Fu protests, claiming his men are unfit to be soldiers and plans to dissuade the general from letting Shang's men fight. Fearing that Chi Fu is getting in the way of his plans, Mushu sneaks into the tent and fakes a letter from Shang's father, General Li, ordering his men to follow the army into the mountains. When Mulan's horse refuses to join the ruse, Mushu finds a random panda and a suit of armor to deliver the letter to Chi Fu. The next day, the soldiers march up a mountain pass to catch up to the Imperial Army in a fight against the Huns. After a grueling trek into the mountains, the men distract themselves by thinking of the girl they are fighting for when they arrive at a burnt village that was supposed to have been protected by the Imperial Army. They later discover General Li and his men's remains covered in snow. It turns out that the Huns have taken out the Imperial Army. After a moment of silence to grieve over their fallen comrades, they march back to the Imperial City, knowing that they are the only soldiers left of the Empire. Forced to cut through a mountain pass and reach the city before the Huns, Mushu accidentally fires a Holong Chu Sui cannon, to which Shang is furious for having revealed their position to their enemies. The Huns suddenly ambush them in a rain of arrows. They tried to fight back with whatever cannons they had left. When they thought they had whittled their numbers, Shan Yu shows up over the horizon with hundreds of men on horses. Shang and his men are forced to make it a close combat with only one cannon left. Mulan cleverly thought of using the remaining cannon to cause an avalanche that buried the entire Hun army. Furious, Shan Yu got close enough to Mulan to strike her before he got buried in the snow. Mulan and Shang managed to stay on top and avoid being buried riding on Khan. As they were about to fall off the cliff, Mulan shot an arrow tied with a rope, which Yao caught. They then pulled them to safety when Mulan suddenly collapsed from the wound she got from Shang Yu. Later, the doctor treats Mulan's injuries, but reports to them that she's a woman disguising herself as a man. Instead of executing her as the law requires for committing treason, Shang spares her life and expels her from the army. He explains that his debt is repaid after having her save his life from the Huns. Mulan is left behind as the other soldiers depart for the Imperial City to report to the Emperor of the Huns' defeat. However, Shan Yu and 5 of his trusted warriors have survived and are determined to continue their conquest, to which Mulan witnesses them heading toward the city below. Mulan enters the city and warns Shang, who receives a hero's welcome after claiming to have defeated the Huns. The Emperor later meets with Shang, who presents him with Shan Yu's sword when Shan Yu's eagle suddenly shows up and takes it back to its master. The Huns emerge from the dragon mascot to capture the Emperor and seize the palace. Shang and his men tried to break down the door, but it doesn't bulge. Mulan calls out to her friend Yao Ling and Xian Po, claiming she has an idea. The Emperor is taken before Shan Yu, who demands he bows down to him. The Emperor explains that no matter how the wind howls, the mountain cannot bow to it. Meanwhile, after giving up their armor, Yao, Ling, and Qian Po dress up as concubines and climb the palace poles using scarves. After catching the Huns off guard with their outfits, they knock them out, to which Shang then runs towards the Emperor to save him. When Shang Yu is about to strike at the Emperor, Shang arrives to save him, and Qian Po escorts him out of the palace. Mulan cuts the rope to stop Shan Yu from chasing after the Emperor, to which she also cuts off their only escape. Furious for sealing his victory from him, Shan Yu attacks Shang, but Mulan stops him, claiming that she stole his victory. Mulan then lures him to the roof, where she disarms him with a fan. After the signal, Mulan pins him down while Mushu fires a giant skyrocket at him, sending him directly into the fireworks launching tower, where he passes away from the explosion. Chi Fu and the Emperor later emerge after the fireworks explosion, to which the Emperor initially reprimands Mulan, but then he surprisingly praises her for having saved China from Shan Yu and his men. He then bowed to her, and the rest also bowed to her in honor. For her achievements, the Emperor suggests having Mulan become a royal council member. Chi Fu claims there are no council positions open, so the Emperor then suggests having Chi Fu's job, which Mulan politely declines as she wants to return home to her family. The Emperor gave her his crest and Shan Yu's sword, so her family would know what she did for him and China. After saying their goodbyes, Mulan returns home with Mushu and Kriki. Mulan later meets with her father and presents gifts from the Emperor to honor the Fa family, but he tosses them aside and embraces her, claiming that the greatest gift in honor is having her for a daughter. While Mulan's grandmother is complaining, saying that she should have brought back a man instead of a sword, Shang shows up for Mulan. He claims to return her helmet when Mulan invites him to stay for dinner, which he graciously accepts. While the great ancestor is happy with how things turned out, Mushu is reinstated as a family guardian. While the ancestors celebrate, Mulan then finds Mushu and kisses him on the forehead to thank him for everything. The end. Thank you so much for watching. Check out these other videos, and please make sure to subscribe and tap the bell to be notified about our latest videos. See you next time.